I grind for the love of the game. If we roast your team, we mean no disrespect. We grind for the love of the game. NBA deadline looms. Calls for a temperature check.
It's getting cold in here, that's for sure. It's wintertime in the NBA and wintertime on the Projected the Jump podcast.
It is. It's been a mild winter in the PNW overall, I would say. We haven't had like the big snow hit. But I did get to check out Mount Bachelor for the first time. I know that is your neck of the woods over there in Bend, Oregon. Checked out Sisters, a quaint little town with a rodeo history. And thought of you when I was there.
That's a nice spot. I always like the themed town. It's kind of I like gimmicks in general, and
yes, you do.
If you're telling me an entire town is a gimmick, like it's basically the Coors Light mountains of a town, I'm in on that. That sounds great.
It is the town that's on all of those beer steins from the 70s.
For sure, yeah.
You know?
I just to extrapolate on this a little bit more, too.
Yeah,
I
totally.
I think that type of town is the type of town that's blowing up in the 21st century. You have Nashville, theme town, blowing up. Vegas, blowing up.
You say the 21st century.
Yeah, right. I mean, or this, yeah.
That's so good. Okay, speaking of gimmicks and themes, what we're going to do today is check out team motivation. So, the NBA trade deadline's coming, and I wanted to kind of break down and let you tell me how you approach this. But I wanted to go through and look at the situation as far as which teams control their own first-round picks, what teams are kind of on the bubble of knowing if they want to go for it or tank. We focused on the teams who probably won't be playoff teams. And I do want to give a shout out to a loyal listener of ours, Spidey, because I was reaching out to him kind of talking topics, and he was like, I would love to hear kind of a breakdown of the team's pick situations and how it could affect their activity. And I was like, done. That is a good idea. So how did you attack this, Licky?
For sure. I mean, normally we like to not discuss what we're going to talk about too much. In this case, I did know that you were doing that breakdown, so I did the same thing. I took a look at the teams that seemed most likely to be kind of missing the playoffs, and it's challenging in the East. I mean, or the East is interesting right now because you still have at this juncture. There's still 10 teams that realistically think they're going to win a playoff series. And so, it took some guesses to figure out which teams might not be, but a lot of them are pretty much set in stone at this point.
Yes. You have the teams like the Bulls, who are perfectly content being the 10 seed, and it's kind of their identity. And I kind of lobbed them off because they just seem destined for the play-in, like they usually are.
Oh, good news. I have a little bit on them.
That is good to hear. All right, let's get into this. I wanted to give a shout out as well, Licky. So as I was working on this article where we're going through a team-by-team pick breakdown, I found Bobby Marks had just dropped an article, and it's called NBA Trade Deadline, the most important draft assets we're watching. So I extrapolated a little bit from that, and I wanted to give a shout out. From that article, I saw that 13 teams have either traded or swapped their 2026 first-round pick. So, like half the league.
Whoa. Wow. That's wild.
Yeah. Isn't that?
Over half the league.
Yep, exactly. Let me know if you've heard of this, because Shams reported this in December, that because of the layers upon layers of these swaps, and they're aggressive and they're complex and they keep moving and rolling along. The NBA is exploring a rule change that would limit pick protections to either top 4 or top 14 protected. Just a clean, okay, you want to protect the top 3 or do you want to protect the lottery? Which I think could really help these targeted tanks where you have teams like Utah this year. They have to be in the top 8 exactly, like knowing those sort of things. You get these strategic ways of tanking, and it's just not great for the product.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was Bobby Marks, or I forget who it was. Somebody said that was a solution in search of a problem. That one to me didn't seem like the silver bullet solution as far as solving tanking. It certainly would simplify things and perhaps grease the wheels on some trades a little bit, but it makes it easier from the fans' sense of things, because a lot of times, like you're saying, these trades are so complex, especially when you have swap rights on swap rights, sometimes on swap rights.
Yep, swap within a swap was one piece of language I saw that was like, ugh.
Yeah, and you look at it, and I read some of those today, and I was like, I read this 3 times, and I still don't really know who would get this pick in which situation, and that's confusing.
Agreed. So it would help podcasts like this become more clear, but we're going to do our best to not confuse and to untangle some of this stuff. So, Natron, let's start in Milwaukee. So their pick situation is fairly straightforward. They receive the less favorable of their pick or New Orleans first-round pick, which, at this point is clearly going to be their own. Okay, so I've already screwed this up.
Or likely.
Right.
He's going to Atlanta, yeah.
Yeah, so it's going. Thank you. So it's going to Atlanta. They actually do not control their own first round pick until 2031. They don't control their own second round pick until 2032. So perhaps one of the most screwed teams in the league.
So leveraged.
Yeah, it's really, and they got the title. So I think some of the assets that went out in the Drew Holiday trade you can justify. So as far as assets they have now in the trade market, can I interest you in Alex Antetokounmpo? Who's actually never played a minute in the NBA. He's just like on their G League roster. If they
Is that true? No, that can't be true. There's no way that's true.
Well, if there's
really?
Thanasis, I don't think Alex has played.
Thanasis
He hasn't
definitely plays.
Alex hasn't played this season.
That's amazing.
Sure. Yeah.
Wow.
So does he get attached to any Giannis deal, or are there just like sad leftover Antetokounmpos on the Bucks roster for years? If Giannis is traded?
I feel like Giannis has built in enough equity that he could just be like, all right, you got to throw in my brother.
You're taking one of my brothers.
Yeah.
So Ryan Rollins, let's talk about your boy here. He is on the first year of a 3-year, $12 million contract. That player option after next year has probably already been declined. When I was going through and trying to find assets, that's the best one I could find, but there's really no motivation to move Ryan Rollins. So from a fantasy perspective, is there anything actionable as we prepare for any Milwaukee fallout that you can think of?
Well, I think obviously the big thing that's overhanging them is, will they or will they not trade Giannis? I think it's a little hard to go about at this point with an expectation that he would be traded. I think it could happen, but I think it's hard to make fantasy plans with that assumption in mind, is at least how I'm moving through that world there. So I guess I'm looking at guys, they clearly are on this upside. They need to find some upside, so they're hunting so hard. The only thing that I saw that was a little, I thought had a slight pop potential on their current roster. Now hold your nose here, but AJ Green.
Yeah. He's a nice role player for a team who's ready to contend. He is.
They need him. He's getting really big minutes right now. He's getting 30 plus a night. His shooting has been ice cold. 36% from the field for a guy who's supposed to be a dead eye is really bad. But I feel like you could definitely see a hot streak coming at a certain point. And I feel like the one encouraging thing is he's really surpassed Gary Trent Jr., whose minutes have really plummeted down into the teens. The other thing is he's got triple positional eligibility, and I know we all love that. So point guard, shooting guard, small forward. So you can fit him in there if he has a hot couple weeks, he's going to be great. But that was the closest thing to a diamond in the rough that I could find.
I appreciate you doing the hard work there. Yeah, doing the Lord's work and scraping the bottom of the. I didn't actually realize that Green had the small forward eligibility. That's a nice wrinkle.
I think it was new. Nice.
Well, congratulations to him. Can we move on from Milwaukee? Or got anything more?
Just a 30-second question to you is: has Bobby Portis progressed into glue guy territory? He's the 78th player in the league.
I miss Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis is a player that is dependent on who's in the lineup that particular day. I still like him as a situational streamer. Miles Turner missed a game recently, and Portis popped up. As a season-long hold, I don't really see it, but I think he should turn into the Tim Hardaway Jr. of power forward centers. Somebody that we pick up, extract the value out of them, and don't feel like you have to hold when he's not getting the minutes.
Good way to put that.
That's how I feel about Punch Bob. All right, well, that was a little trip to Milwaukee. Let's head over to Charlotte. Let's break down the Hornets. So the Hornets do not control their own pick. They will get the least favorable of the Phoenix Suns, Washington Wizards, Orlando Magic, Memphis Grizzlies first-round pick. The Mavericks actually in 2027, so the next season, their first conveys to Charlotte unless if it's top 2 protected. So a nice little wrinkle. They finally obviously nailed their first rounder in Knipple. And so my kind of takeaway on them is that tanking actually really does them no good, and their core players should be safer than we're used to. One interesting wrinkle before I kick it to you is LaMelo Ball. His minutes have been relatively capped, and I feel like that could be a way to kind of preserve him. He's around 28 minutes per game this season, which is down by 3.5 minutes from his career average. So just kind of interesting. The usage is a little bit down, but maybe we'll actually get to see LaMelo Ball playing games in March and April because they don't really have the incentive to tank out there.
Yeah, the Hornets were the toughest one that I had. I was having a real hard time figuring out if they own their pick or not. I thought that it was top 8 protected, but maybe I was wrong about that.
It's an endless exercise. You can check different sources and you read it one way versus another way. So yeah, it is confusing. So I think they will get a first round pick, but I'm not sure if it will be determined by how they perform.
By some sort of swap. I think regardless, I think the organizational would like to push for a play-in, so I think it's a little moot as far as what their actions are going to be on the court. For right or for wrong, I think that they shouldn't be doing that. To be honest with you, the Hornets for years have been my second favorite team. I cannot watch them. I don't like rooting for them. I don't like following them. Watching them makes me sad. Their players are depressing. The situation is a little challenging. It's tough. The one thing I was going back and through because I was looking also. I mean, I knew that you would be pulling up the draft things. Is the Hornets scouting department has secretly done a really nice job.
Yes.
So I was looking through who they drafted recently. Con Knipple, Hit, Brandon Miller seems pretty good.
Yeah. Wasn't a super strong draft up top, and that was a solid pick.
Yeah, they drafted and then traded away Mogay. It looks pretty good for Atlanta. They drafted and traded away for Peanuts immediately for just future picks, Jalen Duren. I didn't realize that.
I did not realize
and
that.
And then this one, I don't know how it escaped me. I don't know how I missed this. I knew they drafted PJ Washington, but then the year before, they drafted Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and traded him for Miles Bridges.
Excuse me?
Yeah, I had completely forgot about that. It never gets brought up. The trade from the
Clippers didn't draft Shea?
No, the Hornets did, and they immediately traded him for Miles Bridges and 2 second-round picks.
Stop.
Yep.
Okay. That's a nice. I do. So the PJ Washington trade is how the Mavericks potentially have a very good pick next year, which we'll get to Dallas eventually when we get to the West. But yeah, that pick is only top 2 protected that they got in that PJ Washington trade. So that was pretty sound.
Yeah, but that's it. As far as things that could happen there, I mean, you mentioned LaMelo playing. I mean, I think it'd be great if he continues playing. If he doesn't play, I think the only thing that I'm kind of watching is Colin Sexton clearly has taken over Trey Mann in those minutes. He's playing 30 minutes when LaMelo sits versus Trey Mann's 23. Yeah. So that's, I think he's kind of the guy to target in those situations.
Yeah, Trey Mann feels a little bit more like a piece that you jot out there as a high usage, tank piece, honestly. He's a bit of a tank commander.
Yes.
Did want to shout out Diabate since we last recorded. He kind of has taken that job from Ryan Kalkbrenner, and he's looked great. He's putting up some nice numbers.
He has. Kalkbrenner almost got a 6 minutes, almost a DMP.
Yeah, so we'll monitor that one, but I think my overall takeaway is that Charlotte, they're a little more insulated this season, and you might be safe with your pieces there. Let's go to Brooklyn, shall we? You down?
Let's go up north.
Let's do it. So Brooklyn, they straight up own their first-round pick. No confusion on that. They own their first. Next season, Houston can swap with the Nets. So they're really interesting to talk about because they have to toe this line where they have been better than they want to be this season, but they have no incentive to tank next season. So they're just trying to strike this very delicate balance of that reality. And so let's talk about a couple of their players, Likia. Just want to get your first reaction. So MPJ, he's a free agent after next season. Do they build around him or flip him at what seems to be peak value? He's putting up great numbers. Is he a building block or is he somebody that would behoove them to sell?
Isn't that the question? I feel like in the offseason, I mean, he could be a real prize to anybody that's contending, which is ironic. I mean, there's no other word for that. I mean, considering that Denver moved off of him, and then
there's no Drew Eubanks, you say prize, but he's played well.
Well, that's true. That'd be a big prize. That's a big prize.
That's the prize.
But I mean, Maga Porter is, I mean, realistically, I mean, he's one of, if not the best picks in the fantasy draft world this year.
He's up there.
He's the number 18th per game player, and you got him at the 71st pick on average. So he's been terrific. I think I think everybody that's rostering him is probably rooting for a trade, I would imagine, because otherwise, talk about a shutdown candidate if you've ever seen one.
Yeah, the per game value could come down in a trade. It's very likely to. But you feel more protected from a shutdown. It just interests me. It interests me because they own that pick this year, but you don't want to break it down to the studs when next year Houston can swap with you.
True.
So I get to my next guy, Licky, here. Nick Claxton, he has 3 more years on a 4-year, $100 million contract. Day'Ron Sharpe is killing it behind him right now. In limited minutes, he's putting up some pristine lines. Day'Ron Sharpe is somebody who you want to make room on your roster for now because he's playing well enough to hold. But if they did move Nick Claxton, look out. So I think this is the trade we want for fantasy. So for Brooklyn, what would you do there? How would you do that line? Claxton, a reasonable contract, a very good rim running center. He's having a career year. He's hitting free throws. He looks like an much improved player. So just put on your GM hat. What should Brooklyn do with Nick Claxton? So maybe we can think about it from a fantasy lens.
I think would be theoretically the most tradable of those guys, just because he's. Yeah. I wonder. I think we're seeing the ceiling for him. I think this is what it is. A good player, a very good player. But I think if you get real value for him, you probably have to take it. Honestly.
Agreed.
And they, like you said, they have Clowney, they have Day'Ron Sharpe behind them, so they have some other options there. The Day'Ron Sharpe one's an interesting one, because I was going to ask you about that as well, because he's clearly one of the permanent darlings in the NBA. Yeah. I mean, as far as absolutely crushing his 20 minutes per night that he gets. Right. My kind of hunch a little bit, and I'm curious to see how you feel about this, and so is I kind of feel like maybe this is his 5th year in the league. Does Brooklyn really just like him at 20 minutes a night? I feel like you see some guys that just play amazing at that limited minutes, a la Rob Williams. Or do you see more of an Onyeka Okongwu in this, where he could just have that breakout this year or next year?
I think this is the right year for the Nets to find out. That's my answer.
Good answer.
I definitely don't feel strongly enough that Day'Ron Sharpe puts up these stats just because his minutes are limited to not find out what he looks like in 30 minutes a game. I think that should be one of the Nets' goals for this season. And I agree that Nick Claxton, the contract is movable. He is a piece that could fit seamlessly onto quite a few contenders. And so I think you're right. I think you can get value. I mean, look at Capella. He's been flipped for multiple first-round picks over the years. Clint Capella. I think Claxton, could get you something. And so let's see what Day'Ron Sharpe can do in that role. As far as my take, I don't think he's good. I don't think he's going to be like Onyeka Okongwu, but we don't always know. I mean, look at some of the breakouts we're seeing this. We were just texting about Peyton Watson. I mean, who knew that guy could shoot at this high of volume? And we knew he was a defensive stats monster in low volume. But look at the player that was waiting. And so I think Day'Ron Sharpe could be one of those guys, and the Nets need to figure it out.
That seems so smart, especially for a team that needs so many pieces. Why this is the season to figure out what you got.
Yeah, exactly. And what am I supposed to do if someone keeps passing me pieces? You're just gonna.
Yeah. One thing I think they have figured out, and I think they are going to utilize the rest of the season. And I don't think that we even care that they're going to utilize them. Is Cam Thomas? It's what's crazy. He's averaging 19 points a game this season, and he is the 280th ranked player per game.
Yeah, talk about
averaging 19 points. That's insane.
Talk about a tank commander. Somebody you put out there to just take every shot in the world. He's ready to go. He's the captain. He's the captain of the tank commanding ship.
For sure.
He's been atrocious. I swooped him in our league of record, thinking it was kind of a heads up play before his minutes. He's just garbage. He's a bucket, is the way we said about him. He's a bucket, yeah, but he's a bucket of nothing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, he's a bucket with nothing in it. And what are you going to do with an empty bucket?
Instead of playing with this analogy, should we head over to Washington, D.C.?
Oh, happily, yeah.
Let's do that. Okay, so I think I got this one right. So the Wizards, their pick this year is top 8 protected. So it goes to New York if it's 9th or worse.
Right. Yeah, and then it conveys to 2 seconds if it doesn't happen this year, right?
Yes, exactly. They do have swap rights with the Suns if the pick is kept, which looked more interesting, but the Suns are very competitive. Your boy Dylan Brooks, who, by the way, just a quick timeout, quick pause on Washington. I've been rostering Dylan Brooks for a month, and I need to trade him. I'd like to.
How does it feel?
I don't like it,
man.
But he needs to be rostered. He says, and he goes well with Devin Booker, who just had an ankle injury, and I have Devin Booker on this team, and so I love that usage jump. That if Booker's out, I mean, Dylan Brooks has already taken as many shots as is, so that is a nice little caveat piece for that roster. But did you see that? Did you see that play at the end of the game where it was against Miami last night, and he shot a 3 and he airballed it, and as he came down, he tried to create contact with the defender and just raked him in the weirdest way. Got a flagrant for that. Did you see
I
that play
did
at the
not
end of
see
it?
this. No.
Yeah, it was just the most Dylan Brooks thing ever. And then he looked all pouty and upset about it.
It's a very Dylan Brooks play to just like toe the line and then go 4 steps over.
Yes, exactly.
I love that.
And I know how you feel about those the color commentators in Miami. Not your favorite, right?
Not my favorite. Not my favorite.
Yeah, they were like, you got to be happy for a guy who works this hard, but why does he have to act like this? Like, can he just enjoy that he's carved out a niche in the NBA without being a total doofus? And like, yeah, it was fair.
Yeah, that guy has the biggest chip on his shoulder outside of Jordan, maybe.
It's actually crazy. And that WP on his shoulders exposed out of his jersey, does that stand for WordPress on Dylan Brooks? Like, what is the WP there? You ever thought about that?
What that is. No, I don't know. Western, I don't know, he's Canadian, but I'm trying to think of where that would be, how that would play in. I'm not sure.
No more guessing. That's obvious homework for you. Next time we come on, please give a synopsis on the origin of the WP tattoos on Dylan Brooks' shoulders.
All right, I got some homework.
I'd appreciate that. All right, back to Washington. You know, fresh news, fresh off the trade. Trae Young was just ruled out through the All-Star break. Mm-hmm. I anticipate that we're going to have a la Brandon Ingram to the Raptors thing. I'd be surprised if we see him on the court for Washington. It just kind of feels that way. You know, clearly they need the pick to be in the top 8, and I think they're just going to roll this over. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think him being injured was actually a perk of the trades for them. And so I think that was a real big reason that they did the trade, is that they could very, very reasonably, comfortably sit down, get $47 million out of their payroll with no questions asked. So I think that was a
from
big
a fantasy perspective.
I was a little...
What a bummer.
Yeah.
What a frustrating one to just have him stuck in your injury spot. I was going through, shout out Matt Boucher, legend. It just sucks to have him sitting there because you can't drop him but you're not going to get anything definite, I don't think.
It is the worst, because if he comes back, he's going to be a top 25 player, but he's probably not. And so you're going to sit on him for 7 weeks while you're just dropping the standings like crazy.
Yes.
That sucks. That's
a
shitty outcome.
So here's my official Flying J fantasy advice on Trae Young. In our particular league, both of our IL spots are IL plus spots. I think the typical league that has IL plus spots, because if you don't have IL plus spots, what are you doing? Get in a new league, talk to your commissioner, have an intervention, figure it out. But I think most leagues, and maybe we'll get to this eventually, in our league, they also have a traditional IL spot and IL plus. Ours were both made into IL plus. If you have both types, if you have a traditional IL spot with stash ability, you can put them away on the shelf and hope for good news, do that. If both of your spots have that flexibility to be picking guys up with, for instance, I picked up Sadiq Bey. We're playing this week, Licky and I are. We're battling for the second place in our league. And I picked up Sadiq Bey when he was probable, knowing he had that tag, so I could manipulate my moves and get Cunningham and Duren and different tags manipulated through the rest of our matchup. That is a pivotal strategy when you have IL+. And so if you don't have traditional IL, I think Trae Young can be dropped. I think you can safely drop. I think it's one
of the bigger mistakes that you commonly see in fantasy is people sitting on just guys that are just inside the top 100 that are out for long-term injuries on their IR. I think that is...
Yep.
I think you're basically committing to playing with one hand tied behind your back. If it's clearly a top 50 guy, you do it. You happily and easily do it. If it's anything longer than 8 weeks, that's tough. I mean, it better be Jokic. It better be Jokic.
Yeah.
But it's that stuff.
So in that situation, just to make it clear for the people, if you only have IL plus spots and you aren't, in first place in your standings, would you get ahead of it and drop Trae Young and just move on?
Yeah, I would. And I think sometimes in those situations, I'm also cognizant of this idea that I'll drop him, and if there's a whiff, I will pick him up.
A whiff, a sniff.
Oh, 2 weeks
Nothing.
early.
Yeah. Whatever.
I mean,
whatever
I'm going to get him, and then but at a minimum, you're going to get yourself a few weeks there, of being able to do something else and kind of get somebody else in there. Because really, I mean, there's honestly, with these things, I mean, with Trae Young out, all of a sudden there's going to be some of these Washington guys they're stepping into bigger roles. And sure, they're not going to be Trae Young, but they're going to be 80 cents on the dollar. I mean, your boy, Bub Carrington, I think was the biggest winner out of this whole situation, because you have CJ, who was I mean, I think he's stepped into the biggest opportunity. I mean, I know he's not even starting right now, but I mean, CJ was at least the table setter for Washington. I mean, he's not a natural point guard, but
Yeah.
he was providing that structure for them. He'd come
Right.
down, they would do crazy possessions, and every once in a while he would just stop, give everybody a breath, and kind of get them all organized. And I think that
Yeah.
is really going to fall. I mean, it's going to fall to Trey Johnson, but I think Bub Carrington has the biggest opportunity. I mean, since Trey Young has been traded there, Bub Carrington has jumped up to 117 when he was 266 on the season. So he's had a big jump since then. I know that's a small sample size, and he's been starting lineup, bench, but really, I think what the thing that I've been paying attention to is his assists have been ticking up.
Yeah.
And so he's been kind of trying to take on that usage there.
Look at us, I guess, being willing to change, because on this very podcast not too long ago, you left Bub Carrington for dead. You left him for dead.
I was a little salty about that. I was a little saucy about that, and I kind of shut that one down aggressively, you know. But
And I also
change.
cocked my head at the camera and I gave that Snoop Dogg who when you brought up Colin Murray Boyles, and look at me enjoying the fruits of that pickup.
Damn.
So it's interesting. I've ended up with Colin Murray Boyles, and you've ended up with Bub Carrington. I guess that's how the fantasy gods wanted it.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. So that's yeah. I mean, I think Bub Carrington, has in this post trade. I'm a little bit more encouraged by him than I am by Trey Johnson. I
That's an
don't know how you
important
feel about
takeaway.
that. I think that
That's an important
really.
yeah, and that
Yeah, I think with Trey Johnson, I mean,
yeah,
so far he's not getting the assists and he's not getting to the line.
right.
So if one of those two things changes,
Yeah.
then he becomes a rosterable guy. But right now, he's 192. I think if one of those things changes, he could pop into the top 100 real quick. But we'll just something to monitor.
Yeah, Bub and Trey Johnson, keeping an eye on those guys, giving them a spin. I think they'll be frustrating guys rest of the season to roster. I think they should be rostered right now to see kind of how it shakes out, and you're right. The indications are Bub has a more well-rounded fantasy game. Trey Johnson's a little one-dimensional, like you mentioned. Trey Johnson's not too different than, you should know this, who was that UConn shooting guard who's now in New Orleans, that Jordan Hawkins. I think he's better than Jordan Hawkins, but it's a similar profile to Jordan Hawkins.
For sure.
And so before we move on from Washington, I did want to point out, I think the takeaway from the season is Alex Sarr has blossomed into their franchise cornerstone in his second year. And so that's pretty cool for a team who's been directionless and aimless for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, they nailed that pick, especially in a weak draft. To nail a pick in that draft is, I feel like, even a double cherry on top. I mean, there really has been less than 5 guys that look like they're good starters out of that draft, and they got a good piece there.
One final question, because I know people are wondering. My takeaway, and there's some other players like this we'll get to in the West, for instance. Alex Sarr, the rest of season, I do think they can achieve their goal with him playing. Now, they'll be careful as the season goes along, but I'm not seeing a Lauri Markkanen style shutdown in the future for Alex Sarr. How do you feel about that?
No, I mean, right now they're in 14th place in the East. I think they have enough buffer built up. That roster is so spare around them, and Alex Sarr is good right now, but I mean he needs development. I mean, I think I see a lot of JJJ in him, and so I think that they have all the incentive in the world to continue playing him, and if they have to, shut down a Chris Middleton or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Hopefully they can get something from Middleton. I was going through their roster and there's not a whole lot of pristine assets, but maybe they could turn him into a second round pick, conditional, top 55 protected.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, you got anything else in the East, Licky?
In the East?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Pacers.
Okay, let's. Oh yep. I did skip over the Pacers. Yep.
Yeah, Pacers dead last in the East, but they've been competitive as of late. I mean, it's been a sad situation, them falling. They own their first round pick due to some witchcraft trading that they did in what was it? Is it after Game 6 or something in the finals, or Game 5? I mean, it was.
So they re-required the pick that they traded to get Pascal Siakam initially. That pick, they landed in New Orleans. There's like this whole, history of a pick, and Bobby Marks goes into, it's kind of like the sisterhood of the traveling pick swap, you know? So that pick they got back the day after Hallie first strained his calf, which he tried to play through, ultimately leading to his right Achilles tear. So they had the intel to know, you know what? We have a championship on the line that we can go get. He's going to play through something that maybe ultimately we don't think is smart. Let's trade for our first round pick. So they traded.
So genius.
Right? Yeah. So the whole league is kind of celebrating that. But they own their first many years moving forward, like you. So this feels like a 1 year super tank to me. And they could be kind of right back in the mix.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think it's kind of a weird tank they're going to do because they have all the incentive of the world to try to get a top 3 pick because they're not going to be here next year, and they would like to get this one missing piece. But it's also bizarre because they want to kind of preserve that winning culture as well. I think that's really important to championship teams is to like you can't just kind of create this like atmosphere where you lose all the time. Right. So I'm curious to see how they're going to do it. I mean, you texted the other day, you talked about how bizarre their rotations are, and really they're playing 10 guys almost even minutes, and so I think. The only things that I had on them was, I think, first off, I think Pascal's Siakam, I think his rankings are among the most misleading of anybody in the league. He's the 94th per game player, but it's really only because he's shooting in the 60s from the line on high volume. You take that out, he's top 40, and so that's a really strong player there.
And it just doesn't look like that for Pascal Siakam in a points league. In a points league, you don't see any of that in the rankings.
That's a good point.
But I just want to shout out to all my Huff bros, my J Huff aficionados.
This is where I was going to come back to. Yeah, I wanted to hear your take on this.
Well, I like the player, and I think it was a really smart little trade that they made with Memphis. And it would be nice. What I'll say is if you bet player props, if you do any DFS, just be careful with Pacers. I've had some nice Huff hits, and I've huffed and puffed and blown my wad on Jay because the minutes they could get yanked at a moment's notice. So I think hopefully we could get a solid role for Jay Huff and kind of know what to expect. But I think Rick Carlisle is going to be all over the place. And so do you have any hope for Jay Huff being someone that we can hold rest of season in fantasy? Or are we always going to be worried about the minutes?
Yeah, I was hoping that you were going to provide some details there because it's tough because I mean he's the number 66 player in fantasy.
He's a sick profile.
Part of that is that he's blocking everything in sight. I mean, he's blocking like he's prime Miles Turner. And so, yeah, you're right. Sometimes he's huffing ether, and that's awesome. But then, just in the last 2 weeks, he had a high of 28 games, and then he had another game where he was huffing Jenkins, and he played 11 minutes. And so it's all over the board. If you need blocks, he almost feels like a block specialist and nothing else.
Well, threes, too. He hits the threes.
And threes, yeah, true.
Yeah, he strokes it. He honestly is giving you a pretty close facsimile to Miles Turner when he gets the minutes. Last season's Miles Turner, not this season's.
Yeah, right. Yeah, kind of a poor man's.
Yep. Okay, so that's the East. We are at about the 37-minute marks. So live on pod, we can chop this at 40, and we'll be back next week with the West, or we can keep rolling through the West. What do you think, Licky?
Let's roll through the West.
Let's do it.
Yeah, chop it and roll.
Let's chop it and roll. Okay, I hit a little marker. So we're going to roll right into the West. So just to kind of give you a reminder. So this is the team motivation temperature check. So we went through every team's first round pick, got an idea of if they own their own pick, if there's swap rights to another team, the level of motivation that a team has to push it versus their need to tank.